I'm diving deep into the meaning of family bonds today, and I'm challenging myself to connect with my loved ones in ways I never have before. Let's get started with Gregory, Caroline, Eliza, Ethan, and Lily Turner seemed like the perfect family, respected, loved, and admired by all who knew them in the peaceful town of Meadowbrook. But when Caroline disappeared without a trace and her lifeless body was found hidden in the woods, the truth behind their seemingly flawless life began to unravel. As dark secrets from their past surfaced, shocking revelations about betrayal, deceit, and a chilling murder exposed a family torn apart from within. Who could have predicted that the greatest danger to the Turner family would come from the one person they trusted the most? Meadowbrook was the kind of town that seemed to belong to another time. Quiet, safe, and predictable. Located on the outskirts of a bustling city, it had all the charm of a small community where everyone knew each other's name. Its tree-lined streets were dotted with classic brick homes, each perfectly manicured lawn a testament to the pride of its owners. Among the residents of Meadowbrook were the Turner family, who seemed to embody everything the town stood for. Gregory Turner, the father, was a man of distinction in both appearance and reputation. With his salt and pepper hair and tailored suits, he exuded an air of authority and confidence. He was a lawyer by profession and well respected in the community for his work with local charities. Gregory's career was a source of pride not only for him but for his wife Caroline, who often volunteered at the same charities and helped organize events. The couple's devotion to each other and their 3 children was apparent to anyone who spent more than a few minutes with them. Caroline Turner was the epitome of grace and warmth. Her days were filled with the activities of motherhood, attending school functions, coordinating neighborhood events, and making sure her home was always a welcoming space for guests. With her bright smile and gentle demeanor, Caroline was beloved by all who knew her. She was the heart of the family, and everything seemed to revolve around her ability to create a peaceful and loving home for her children. Their eldest daughter, Eliza, was a 16-year-old with a sharp mind and a bright future. She was focused and driven, often studying late into the night and talking about her dreams of becoming a doctor. Eliza had a maturity that made her seem older than her years, and she was known for taking on a lot of responsibility around the house, helping her younger siblings with their homework and making sure everything was in order. Ethan, her 12-year-old brother, was more laid back, but he was deeply passionate about photography, spending hours roaming the woods near their home, capturing shots of wildlife and the changing seasons. He had an innate curiosity about the world, which led him to ask probing questions that sometimes made the adults around him uneasy. The youngest of the Turner children, Lily, was only 8, but she had an infectious energy that made her the life of any room. With her wide eyes and sing-song voice, she was the type of child who could make anyone smile, no matter how bad their day had been. Her imagination was boundless, and she spent much of her time creating elaborate games with her toys or singing songs that seemed to come from nowhere. The Turner family, with their picture-perfect lives, were the envy of many. They appeared to have everything: a beautiful home, close-knit relationships, and an abundance of love. Neighbors often admired their life from a distance, thinking that such happiness was rare and almost unreachable. No one suspected that beneath the surface, there were cracks in the foundation of their seemingly flawless world. The pressures they felt to rise above once released seemed to crush in, like a crack in a dam waiting to burst. The cracks, though hidden, were there, silent, waiting to erupt. It wasn't until that fateful morning, when Caroline Turner disappeared without a trace, that everything changed. The disappearance of the town's beloved mother and wife sent shockwaves through Meadowbrook. The family, who had always been the epitome of normalcy and happiness, was suddenly thrust into a nightmare that no one could have ever predicted. The perfect world they had built together would soon unravel, revealing dark secrets that no one had seen coming. As the search for Caroline began, it quickly became apparent that nothing would ever be the same for the Turner family again. The morning Caroline Turner disappeared was like any other at first, with no signs of the tragedy that would soon unfold. It was a crisp autumn day, the kind that made the air feel fresh and invigorating, with the leaves turning shades of amber and gold. Caroline had kissed her children goodbye before heading out for her usual morning walk, something she did nearly every day to clear her mind. She would return by noon just in time to prepare lunch and settle in for the afternoon routine. But this time, she never came back. Gregory Turner was the first to notice that something was wrong. By noon, when Caroline hadn't returned, he began calling her phone. His calls went unanswered. At first, he assumed she might have stayed out longer than usual, perhaps chatting with a friend or getting distracted by one of the many errands she often ran. But when the hours passed and there was still no word from her, panic began to set in. By mid-afternoon, the entire family had grown worried. Eliza, Ethan, and Lily were left at home, quietly attempting to continue their normal activities, but the absence of their mother was unsettling. It wasn't like Caroline to go missing without at least sending a text or calling. She was reliable, predictable, always in touch, always on schedule. Gregory called the local police, and within hours, Meadowbrook's small police force had mobilized to search for Caroline. The town, so used to its tranquility, was in a state of shock. Caroline Turner was loved by everyone, and no one could fathom why she would simply vanish. The search began in earnest, with volunteers combing through the nearby parks, woods, and streets in search of any trace of her. The air was thick with anxiety, but nothing was found. No signs of struggle, no unusual footprints, and no indication of where she could have gone. The following day, Gregory's frustration turned into a sense of helplessness. The search continued, but it was as if Caroline had vanished into thin air. No one could explain why she was missing or where she had gone. The police broadened their investigation, checking her phone records and interviewing friends and neighbors, but nothing suggested that she had been involved in any conflict or had been planning to leave. Then, just when the authorities thought they had exhausted every lead, a breakthrough came in the form of a discovery deep in the woods outside town. A local jogger, who had been running along the trail, stumbled across something that would change everything. Caroline's car, a sleek silver sedan, was parked by the side of the road. The doors were slightly ajar, and the keys were still in the ignition, as if she had been interrupted mid-drive. The police arrived on the scene quickly, searching the area. There were no signs of a struggle or anything out of the ordinary. The car seemed untouched, a strange contrast to the growing mystery surrounding her disappearance. The investigation took a darker turn when, hours later, Caroline's body was discovered, hidden beneath a blanket of fallen leaves in a remote part of the woods. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, especially when it was revealed that Caroline had been strangled. The news of her death spread like wildfire through Meadowbrook. The town that had once felt so safe, so untouchable, was now plunged into uncertainty and fear. Who would want to harm Caroline Turner, and why? The answers, it seemed, were nowhere to be found. The exact cause. Some of her friends mentioned that she had seemed worried, though she never confided in them about what was troubling her. No one could have predicted that beneath her calm exterior, Caroline had been keeping a secret. One evening, as Gregory sat at the dining table, leafing through some of his wife's old papers in an attempt to understand what she had been going through, he found something strange. A letter, handwritten, unsigned, was tucked inside one of Caroline's journals. The letter was cryptic, filled with hints of fear and confusion. It mentioned an unnamed person who had been making her uneasy, someone she feared might harm her family. The letter was dated just a few weeks before her death. Gregory was shaken. He hadn't seen this letter before, and it was clear that Caroline had been hiding something from him. But what could it be? Who was this person, and why had Caroline never mentioned it? As he pondered these questions, he was struck by another unsettling thought. The journal had been left behind at the scene of Caroline's death, and he was certain it had been in her possession when she left for her walk that morning. But now, it was nowhere to be found. The search for the missing journal became a focal point of the investigation. Police were certain that it contained valuable information, but it had vanished without a trace. Had it been stolen, or had Caroline hidden it herself for a reason? The police couldn't answer these questions, and Gregory's frustration grew. He began to suspect that someone close to him knew more than they were letting on. Was there someone in their inner circle who had a darker agenda? The suspicion that something was being deliberately hidden began to eat away at the Turner family. As the investigation dragged on, the family's perfect image, the one they had worked so hard to maintain, began to unravel. There were whispers in the town, and the truth seemed to be just out of reach. Gregory, despite his deep grief, felt an overwhelming urge to find the answers no matter where they led. But in doing so, he could not yet know how far down the rabbit hole he was about to fall. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation into Caroline Turner's murder took a sharp turn. What had initially seemed like a tragic and random act of violence was now revealing itself to be something much more complex. The police, having exhausted most of their leads, began to focus on the Turner family's personal lives, especially Gregory. His grief-stricken exterior hid a man who seemed to know far more than he had let on, and the cracks in his perfect persona were becoming more evident. Ethan, in an odd twist, became the unexpected key to unlocking the next chapter of the mystery. The boy, who had once been eager to capture the beauty of nature through his camera lens, had stopped taking photographs altogether. However, his camera had not been abandoned. It lay forgotten on a desk in his room, collecting dust. Until one day, Eliza, suspicious and desperate for answers, decided to take a closer look at the photographs her brother had taken in the weeks leading up to their mother's death. She began sifting through the images, expecting to find nothing more than the usual snapshots of the woods and the occasional family portrait. But then she found something strange. One photograph stood out, a picture of the woods just outside their home, taken from a distance. At first glance, it appeared like just another of Ethan's typical nature shots, but something in the background caught Eliza's attention. There, in the shadow of a large oak tree, stood a dark figure. Barely visible, but unmistakably human. It was not just a shadow. The figure was standing still, partially obscured by the thick brush, as if hiding from view. Eliza's heart raced as she stared at the image. The more she looked at it, the more she became convinced that this was no coincidence. It was almost as though the figure had been watching them. The photograph raised more questions than answers. Who was this person? And why was he or she lurking so close to the Turner family's home? Eliza showed the photograph to the police, and they immediately began to investigate. The image was blurry, but it was clear enough to lead them into the nearby woods, where they began scouring the area for any signs of the mysterious figure. After several days of searching, they stumbled upon a trail of disturbed leaves leading to a hidden corner of the forest, a place that no one in the town knew about. It was here that they made another chilling discovery. Buried beneath a layer of dirt and fallen branches, the missing journal, Caroline's journal, was found. It was not damaged, though it had clearly been hidden for a reason. The police examined it closely, and what they found inside was enough to send shockwaves through the investigation. Caroline had written about her growing unease in the weeks before her death, but the journal's final entries were particularly disturbing. Caroline had been afraid of someone. She didn't name the person, but she described a series of unsettling encounters. Someone had been following her, watching her family, and even sending cryptic messages. The journal made it clear that Caroline had been planning to confront this person, to expose them. But her fear of what might happen kept her from doing so. The police, now focused on the possibility that someone was deliberately targeting Caroline, began to look into her personal connections. They turned their attention to Gregory's past, hoping to uncover any hidden connections that could explain why someone would want to harm his wife. The investigation revealed that Gregory had been involved in a brief but intense affair with a woman named Veronica Monroe, a former client of his. Veronica had been deeply invested in the legal cases Gregory had worked on, and their relationship, though initially discreet, had turned into something more complicated. The affair had ended abruptly, and Veronica had disappeared from Gregory's life shortly before Caroline's murder. Veronica Monroe's disappearance, though not initially connected to Caroline's murder, now seemed significant. The police learned that she had been living just outside Meadowbrook in a small, isolated cabin. She had been in the middle of a bitter custody battle over a child she had with Gregory, a child no one in the town knew about. The discovery of Veronica's cabin raised even more questions. Why had she been keeping such a low profile? And was she somehow involved in Caroline's death? The connection between Veronica Monroe and the Turner family was now undeniable, but it was still unclear how she fit into the puzzle. The more the police uncovered, the more it became apparent that Gregory's past, his secrets and his relationships were at the heart of the mystery. But they still didn't know how far Veronica's involvement went, and if she had truly been the one to end Caroline's life. What they didn't yet realize was that Veronica wasn't the only one hiding something. As the investigation grew deeper, it would soon become clear that someone much closer to the Turner family had played a far more significant role in the tragedy than anyone could have ever imagined. What do you think? Was justice truly served? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more shocking true crime stories.